Hey, 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 hey. Oh, hi, I'm Sarb Johal. I am live now on YouTube, and we'll just wait for some people to come in. Let's just get the link controller started, and we can get this focused properly on me. Here we go. Yeah, we are live now on YouTube. So today is my Ask Me Anything, where we are going to talk a little bit about what did I do in Japan, what gear did I use in Japan, and how useful did I find it? How did it perform? But this is your chance to kind of ask me anything. There's the new webcam mode that's come out on the Go 3. The iPhone 15 is out, and I've talked a little bit about why I'm not getting it, particularly the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which I probably had my eye on more than anything else, and why I'm sticking with my 13 mini for now until maybe I get my hand on a 15 or 15 Pro Max. And we'll see. But at the moment, I think I'm probably hanging out for the 16. All right. Let's see where we are here with the controller. There we go. It's supposed to be that. It's better. There we go. All right. So, yeah, 15 Pro Max. I'm not going to get it. 13 mini. I'm sticking with. This Apple MagSafe battery has been really, really cool, but I'll tell you about where it wasn't so cool and how it didn't work so well when I was in Japan. And also, I've been to London as well since I've been to Japan, London and back. But that was really just a family trip. So I didn't really do much filming there at all. I think I did one afternoon of editing where I escaped to a place where they had all you can drink coffee, and I just spent 2 or 3 hours there putting I think the Shibuya Sky video, which is very surreal. Living in New Zealand, having filmed that in Japan, and editing it in London made me feel very global. But yeah, I only wish I could be a channel big enough to be doing that kind of thing regularly. So yeah, it was kind of fun, but kind of surreal doing that. So it's now October already, middle of October. We're in that kind of period where people are, if you're tech like me, you're probably looking at, what's coming up for the kind of like the holiday buying season, for the present season, for the kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday season, for the gift giving season, and Amazon Prime Day season. Has that happened yet? I don't think it has happened yet. I've missed it totally if I have. Given that I'm an Amazon affiliate, that would be weird if I'd have missed that. So yeah, October. I'm wondering how you're going in your October. How's your year going? Mine's been weird. Kind of like gave up being a psychologist, spending more time doing YouTube. Haven't done a live stream for a while. Was a little bit behind on where I was in terms of my editing. Got a couple of videos coming out this weekend. Another Japan one, another one on how does a 360 camera actually work? If you're contemplating buying one and you're thinking it might be a bit too hard, they really aren't that hard. So I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a primer on how easy it is for those to actually work if you're a consumer, and to get them to work really well to give you really good results. So yeah, that's coming up soon. So here I am in New Zealand. It was a horrific day yesterday, which was partly the thumbnail that I put up for this video, for this live stream. It's blowing a gale. The dog was off doing something, and I was just there at the top of the hill trying not to lose my hat. But today it's a lot brighter. It's a bit cloudier now, but a couple of hours ago when I was taking the dog for a walk, it was a beautiful morning. So that's lovely. So I'm wondering what it's like where you are at the moment in mid-October, how your year is progressing and how your year is winding up. So if you're watching this live or if you're watching it on record, drop me a line. Let me know how you're going. I really value getting messages. I try my best to kind of like reply when I can, but 3 small kids and trying to edit and film and do all that at the same time, but I do really try to get around to all the comments and questions that I get asked. So what did I use in Japan? We're 5 minutes in, so I'm going to crack on a little bit here. What did I use when I was in Japan? Well, I used this a lot. And if you're not familiar with it, this is the Insta360 Flow. And this is the device that changed my mind about gimbals. I had a DJI OM, can't remember, 3. It's buried away somewhere. I should probably get it out and sell it or something. And it was kind of okay. But I also had a DJI Pocket, and I was like, well, I don't really see what benefit I'm going to get using this instead of my Pocket. God, I quite like using my DJI Pocket back in the day. But as phones have got better and as Insta360 has got it better with their apps and everything, I decided I probably should reinvestigate gimbals. And then when I saw Insta360 had put a gimbal out, I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. I really should give this a try. Hey, Jim, good to see you here. Sunny over here in Oahu. I can't pronounce that. I'm sorry. I should know. Oahu. Looking forward to winter. I hope your upcoming summer won't be quite the scorch that the Northern Hemisphere had. Yeah, it's interesting. I think what we've experienced so far is El Nino. So yeah, we're a little bit worried about the heat, but we're also worried about that wind. So El Nino shows itself to us with a real kind of like strong westerly force. So it brings, perhaps a little bit of rain to the west coast of New Zealand where the kind of like the mountains are. But in that rain shadow and on the east side of the North Island as well, it's going to get really dry. So even if the heat isn't so bad, it's going to be the drying effect of that wind that's really going to affect things like agriculture. And they're already predicting water shortages even before Christmas. And we really don't have, thanks, Jim. And we really don't have that long to go before Christmas, and they're already talking about water shortages. I know that some places are already conserving water, even after the relatively wet winter that we've had. So anyway, yeah, back to the Flow. So Insta360 kindly sent me one to test, and I was actually blown away by it. It was so intuitive and easy to use, and with the app, worked really, really well to give me some really, really great results. And the more I used it, the better it got. So that was a no-brainer for me to put into my gear bag. And the thing I like about it also is that it actually folds up really quite small. And for quite a long time, I kind of like would be during the day holding it like this. It's kind of like its own carry handle. And I even had the phone in here because the magnet on this connector is really quite strong. So even with a Pro Max in there, I felt confident enough to have it in there without it dropping onto the ground, and it didn't. So that was really cool. But it also has the built-in tripod as well, which was really handy for like, when I'm trying to go and carry like a bunch of gear, but I don't necessarily want to carry a tripod. This was really cool to have in and took a very little space in my gear bag for me to get some stable shots and some really nice. I use the Moment app, and you get some really nice long exposure shots for waterfalls. And as I get round to publishing a few of my videos and stories from when I was in Japan, when I was on the Nakasendo Trail, there's this really nice waterfall which I wanted to take a photo of, and the Moment app with the Insta360 Flow with that built-in tripod, even not using the Insta360 app, that built-in tripod was really handy to get a nice long exposure waterfall shot. So that was really cool. So I use my Insta360 Flow a lot. And because it folds so small, often in a lot of places in Japan, because they're so crowded, or you're in a bit of a risky area, like Team Lab Planets is essentially half underwater. You're walking around in ankle deep at some points knee deep, and I'm 6 foot tall, and I was kind of just below my knees. Water, they're a bit kind of wary about you walking in with a whole lot of gear, and it's really crowded as well. Like when you're dropping your gear in that water and then it becoming a trip hazard and all the rest of it. So you basically can only go in with what you've got in your hand or pockets. And so having a gimbal that folds up really small and into my hand was really handy for that. Nowhere to put down actually, no, I lie. In one of the rooms, you can put down the kind of like the tripod attachment right in front of you if you want to take like a 360 photo or something like that. It works quite well. But yeah, it was really good for that. And Shibuya Sky, but Shibuya Sky, they told me to put the gimbal away. So I wasn't allowed to use it there. So they're pretty strict. Some places you can get away with it, some places you can't. But for a 360 camera with a selfie stick, you probably aren't going to be able to use it in quite a lot of places. Like you wouldn't have been able to use it in Team Lab Planet. So it was kind of handy for that little niche area of where you can and can't use it. That was really cool. But what device did I use in my Insta360 Flow? So I started off with this, my 13 mini. It's got one of my reservation cards in there from when I was in Japan on the Shinkansen. The Shinkansen is just amazing. I love it. I really miss the public transport system in Japan. It just works really easily and it's really fast. I'm in love with the public transport system in Japan. Anyway, that's my little souvenir ticket. I was using my 13 mini a lot to start with, or at least that was my intention. But when I arrived, it was like 35 degrees and getting hotter. And it was going to be feeling like 41, 42 with the humidity there. And you think maybe that's kind of going to be okay. But firstly, it's really tiring for you doing that day in, day out. Particularly because I was like leaving my accommodation like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes before 6 o'clock in the morning in order to get to somewhere and get the train to get to somewhere. And then not probably going back to my accommodation till maybe 10 o'clock at night. I wasn't really going out at night, but going out for dinner and then transport back and all the rest of it. Sometimes wasn't getting home till like 10 o'clock at night. That's a lot of battery power they're going to be using in heat. So what I noticed was that the iPhone 13 mini, firstly, you know what it's like when you're traveling, you're using your phone for lots of different things. You're checking opening hours, you're checking routing, you're using maps, as well as using the camera functions and all the rest of it. So the screen's on a lot. And it's also using a lot of other apps and background stuff like GPS. So the battery was just like draining really, really fast. So I'd be having to put it in for a recharge at maybe like 10 o'clock in the morning. I didn't ask for whiteboard mode. What are you doing? So that was difficult. And then using the MagSafe battery. Now it's got a really good sort of like design safety feature in that if your battery is overheating, it kind of slows down the charge in order for you not to contribute to the battery overheating. Because when if you notice, you charge in your kind of iPhone or any other phone, you plug it in for a while, it kind of like starts heating up a bit, and that's the current and the battery being charged. Doing that in an already hot environment when the cameras and the phone has already been working quite hard, so it's already quite hot, just meant that it was essentially a trickle charge. It really wasn't charging very effectively. But if I charged it with a kind of like a standalone power bank or with the snap grip, the ShiftCam snap grip that I've got, it doesn't have those safety features. Kind of good in terms of like you can override that overheating kind of warning or the slowing down to try to preserve your battery life and how your battery works on your iPhone without destroying it. But that's also a bad side too, right? Because it's destroying your battery. So I try to avoid doing that. Now, fortunately, I kind of foresaw this happening. I looked at all the forecasts and everybody was saying it was kind of like a record hot summer in Japan. And so I decided to take this instead. And this is my 11 Pro Max with a moment case as well. So I can easily use the moment lenses that I had on here. And I just took the zoom lens with me. I had the anamorphic and the zoom lens. I figured I probably wasn't going to be using anamorphic. The Insta360 Flow app has a really nice wide screen mode on there. And I thought that will do. I don't need to carry something else. So I just took this. Now, this has got a bigger battery. So I could also switch off Wi-Fi and just use this as a kind of like a dedicated and cell phone data, and just have it as a dedicated camera. I wasn't really using it for anything else. And it worked really well. I didn't have to have it connected up to my cloud service in order to kind of offload the photos, because this is a 512 gigabyte device compared to my 13 mini, which is a 128 gigabyte device. So it worked really well from that point of view, but also the battery life. The battery life on this lasted most days without me having to do anything. But also I could recharge this using my power bank, and it wasn't getting too hot. I could kind of feel it in my hand. It was like warm, but it wasn't too hot. So I think that's something to do with when I was charging, I was taking this case off. And also you've got a larger surface area for it to lose heat. And I think that really played in its favor. There's not often where a large phone is going to play in your favor. Yes, you've got the screen real estate, but there are other things now that I consider, particularly when operating in a hot environment. And I guess this is why I'm also kind of like tipping towards getting a Pro Max again. I know it's kind of weird to hear me saying that. Not yet, though. Let me just say hello to a couple of people. Hi, Mike. Good to see you here. Always good to see you here. And Jim, you have water shortages already on the island in Oahu. On this island, we have an artesian well system. It takes 2 or 3 decades for rainfall to dribble down in there. Good grief. Yeah, that's pretty drastic then if you've already got water shortages in terms of how you're going to replenish that system. I'm not getting rid of my Mini. That sits in my hand so nice. I do keep the absolute barest minimum, though. I cheat in that regard. No, and this will stay my daily driver for the next year, I think. But what I was going to say, if I just pick up again, just a little sip of this coffee. I've run out of espresso coffee. It's terrible. I know. Get some coming in later in this morning. My wife's picking up the shopping. Thank you. But I'm on plunger coffee. This is not bad. It's filter coffee, but it's not really what I do in the mornings. But I need this to keep me going. Jim, I'll pick you up just before I carry on. Now you mentioned Wi-Fi. I just realized I don't use Wi-Fi or cell service when I'm out and about taking pictures and videos with my Mini. That's probably what's keeping my battery life good. Yeah, it will. It will drain your battery life. Paging for cell phone service, particularly if you've not got great reception, takes quite a lot of battery, and Wi-Fi is continually searching as well. So I try to switch off my Wi-Fi when I'm not using it, that's for sure. But it's kind of like another thing to remember. I can set up a shortcut to do that. Like if I'm outside of my home, switch Wi-Fi off. I don't do it, but you can do it. Anyway, so yeah, going back to a Pro Max, not yet. I had a look at the specs and some videos of the 15 Pro Max. I haven't had my hand on one yet, so I can't form like an absolutely firm judgment. But what I was disappointed by was there were all the rumors around the iPhone 15 Pro Max having a telescopic zoom lens, which would kind of match the Samsung S23 in going to 10 plus. Now, listening to or reading some quotes from the Apple engineers in charge of all this stuff, they decided to limit the telephoto zoom on the Pro Max and the 15 to 5 times, which for me was like a complete disappointment. And the reason why they say they did it was that they can get really good stabilization effects with 5 times, but above that, when you start getting to 10 times, you're going to need kind of like a tripod in order to use it, in order to get stabilization that gives you like decent footage or decent photos. And that's all very well, and I totally understand that, and I probably agree with them in terms of, you know, trying to keep your hands steady, and whether the optical image stabilization can kind of cope with the amount of shake that is actually apparent when you're trying to magnify 10 times. But I think for me, that's a consumer decision to make. I would rather have the 10 times option there to be able to do it as an optical zoom and use it with a gimbal or use it with a tripod. That's exactly how I would use it. I would lock it off. I would use a tripod and I would manually kind of like sweep it if I needed to, or I would use a digital zoom to like move across like I do with the motion time lapses, which I show people how to do on the Go 3. Similar kind of like process, right? You punch into a little part of the picture and then you sweep across. And if it's already captured at quite a high zoom and you've got it tripod locked off, you get a great effect, I'm sure. So that's what I was disappointed by. Now, Apple has a history of doing this, right? They, I'm sure, run extensive tests and they say, look, this is the bang for buck. Apple users just want it to work. They don't want it to be messing around with trying to get a tripod in order to get a stable image. We don't want people to be disappointed. And so in order to manage our customer reactions, we will just limit that option down to 5 times where we can ensure that they're going to get a good experience. Totally understand it from Apple's point of view. But from me, as a kind of like a prosumer point of view, I'm disappointed. And I will probably hold off, probably getting the 15 Pro Max. Because, it's $3,000. In New Zealand, it's over $3,000 to get, even the base model of the Pro Max, which I wouldn't get. I'd be looking at a minimum 256 gigabyte version of that. So, ideally, I'd like to get a 15 Pro Max to replace this 11 Pro Max. But to be honest, the 11 Pro Max with 2 times zoom plus the 2 times 58mm moment camera, which I used occasionally. Now that's a beefy lens attached onto this 11 Pro Max. This gimbal still handled it. It was fine. Had to rebalance it, but it still handled it and got really, really smooth footage, which I'll show you a little bit more of as I progress through publishing my Japan stories. But yeah, it's that was my go-to. The 11 Pro Max. I would look at the 16 Pro Max if they did something about that issue with the telephoto zoom lens. Also not really sure about how USB is working as well. I mean, like USB is supposed to be like a standard, but there are so many different types of cables and connections with USB that kind of like are supposed to be conforming to the standard, but they don't. It's really remains to be seen how Apple USB-C is going to function in that wider ecosystem. I'm not really sure how it's going to work. And I don't think Apple are either. And they're kind of forced into this situation by the EU regulations around having to do this in Europe. And I think from supply chain and manufacturing perspective, Apple were like, we're not going to have like a separate manufacturing arm just for Europe, but we're probably going to have to go worldwide anyway. Let's just bite the bullet and do it now. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Anyway, so that was what I was using as my kind of main cameras in Japan, and the issues that I was having with overheating just kind of continued. Even if I was like sitting in air conditioning for a while and maybe the camera would calm down when I was on a bullet train, it would take a good hour for it to kind of like calm down and cool down. And then I'd be back into the heat again where it would just like really go really hard again. So I'd be charging my 13 mini up 2, 3, 4 times a day, even sometimes if I was in a really hot situation. So yeah, that was it was very challenging for the 13 mini. That's not to say I don't love this device and will carry on using it. I've got Apple Care for it. The battery health is starting to kind of like go down a year on. So I'll probably get one replacement out of this as the battery health degrades. But this time next year, I'll be looking at that 16 Pro Max very carefully. Mike, I have a family holiday coming up to the Netherlands and Norway. I always end up packing too many cameras. Yeah, I did too. Jim, Mike, planning on my DSLR Insta360 Go 2, interesting, mini drone and my phone. Wife tells me I need to pack lighter. That's interesting in terms of like the combination there, right? I don't know how big your DSLR is. I use the Fujifilm mirrorless cameras. So I've got an X-T1, did have an X-T3 for a while. Didn't like the noise that I was getting on low light images, so I sold that. I love the X-T1, and I still have an X100S, the kind of like the rangefinder type one. And I love the pictures that I get from that, but I just don't use it that often. I also have an XQ1, which again, I did take to Japan, but didn't use it. I also overpacked. So yeah, it kind of depends upon how big your DSLR is and what lenses you're going to take too, right? If you're going to take a kit lens, relatively compact, anything bigger than that, it's probably starting to get a little bit big and heavy. If you've got a Canon or a Nikon or something like that, or a proper DSLR rather than a mirrorless, I see where your wife is coming from. The mini drone, I have a DJI Mini 2. Can't remember the last time I used it. The problem is that A, the pandemic happened, and I didn't really get to travel around that much. B, I live reasonably close to an airport, so I can't even use it at home. I'm in a no-fly zone. And was I doing numbers or letters? C or three, Japan recently changed their legislation, so you cannot fly a drone at all anywhere now, unless you have a license, which is reasonably cumbersome to get. Yeah, even if it's under 250 grams, just that none, no more drone flying in Japan, which I was surprised about, and I didn't end up taking it. So yeah, have a look to see what the regulations are, whether you're actually going to use it that much or not. I mean, they're pretty small now, the DJI mini drones. It's just another thing though, isn't it, with all the padding and the bags and stuff. Mike, Canon SL3, not familiar with that. Not familiar with the Canon range recently. Planning on just taking 2 prime lenses. Nice. 24mm, I guess, for kind of like nice big landscape shots that you're planning with that, and 50mm, which is pretty like, you know, use it for everything, kind of a lens. Okay, nice. The Go 2 is an interesting choice. I took my Go 3. Didn't really use it that much. I used it less than I thought I did. The heat wasn't the problem. I think it was just pretty much traveling every day and having it on me every day. It was just easier. I was worried about it being on my chest and then me knocking it. That was an issue. I remember like thinking, I don't want to lose it on a train or as I'm leaving a train with all the bags. Because I had one big heavy bag, one day pack, and all the other stuff that was kind of I was like trying to manage as well. I remember thinking, I don't want to lose that. So that was an issue. And on the hat clip, you know, sometimes I didn't really want to wear a hat. It was so hot. I took my hat off as soon as I could, whenever I was in a kind of like a cool environment, or like where I didn't need the shade, or, you know, to cover up this from getting sunburned. So yeah, that became a bit of an issue. I didn't really want to carry the Go 3. It felt like I was going to lose it. Having the whole thing out and then using it as a selfie cam, because this screen feels kind of like bare, and I didn't have a bag or anything to put it in. Again, that was another reason for me kind of like not to use it and just use my phone, because I was using my phone so much. It just felt easier. Just, hey, I'm using my phone for everything else. I'll just get my phone out. So it was a convenience thing, even though this is like silly convenient. And I did use it some. You'll see in my last video on Sensoji Temple, the hyperlapse that's going up and down. It was easier to do it on that. But really, it was only use it because I knew I could get motion blur with it at a reasonable resolution. Whereas I did that on Desktop Studio, whereas I couldn't get that using the Insta360 Flow. That's one of my biggest things about the Flow, is that you can't get motion blur if you're doing hyperlapses or time lapses. It's kind of like the more of a staticky, jerky feel, which I'm not that keen on. But I will use it. Go 2 is great for theme parks, going to Efteling Park in the Netherlands. Okay, I've not heard of that, but no reason why I should. Haven't been there. A long time since I went to the Netherlands. Last time I was in Netherlands, I was actually a cricket writer, and I was there for a tournament between in Amstelveen, just outside of Amsterdam. Tournament between Australia, India, and Pakistan. Tri-tournament just before another big trophy was going to be happening in the UK. Yeah, it was weird. It was just before I moved to New Zealand, and I kind of like broke into writing about cricket, and it was just at the wrong time because I was just about to leave the UK where all my contacts were. So yeah, there's another kind of life I could have had but didn't have. But yeah, it was the last time I was in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So yeah, Go 2, I still love my Go 2. I love the form of the Go 2. I find it more convenient than the Go 3, even though I love the screen and the blogging capability of it. I haven't really been using it that much yet with the new Apple Watch functionality, which I think is probably going to make a big difference to me in terms of being able to switch it on and off in terms of video recording and even just capturing photos. But you know, the thing I really missed, I think I'd have worn the Go 3 more if the interval video that was on the original Go was still there. If the interval video that was on the Go, the original Go, was still there, I'd have just set it going. If I'd have known, like, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing for 10 minutes, I'm going from A to B, and just set it to capture 15 seconds every 1 minute or every 30 seconds that I was kind of moving around and doing stuff. It would have been perfect for that. I really miss that. And I've kind of harped on about it in videos. I've even told Insta360 themselves quite a few times that they should bring it back, and it would be, I mean, it would market itself, right? It's like basically you use that in auto edit and you've got a complete video. You don't have to do anything. You basically press record, it gets a load of footage, and you just press auto edit with all that footage that you've got, and bang, you've got a social media video. It's a no-brainer. Don't know why. Anyway, can't believe it's that hard to do. Anyway, yeah, another reason why I probably didn't use the Go 3 as much as I thought I was going to. Jim, I've never tried the GoPro or Insta360 styles of camera. Must try one lashed to one of my handlebars one of these days. Yeah, I reckon that, you know, the one, not the one, but one of the greatest things I think about the Insta360 camera range, no matter what you get, is the flow stabilization. I mean, that was next level. I remember getting even just getting the Insta360 One X, you know, the first kind of like standalone one. They had a 360 camera which you kind of clipped onto a phone, but the first one that was kind of like standalone candy bar kind of like shape, where you had the invisible selfie stick, being blown away. I think I saw Peter McKinnon make a video about it, and I went, hey, that looks really, really cool. Got one, and it was just amazing. And it works really well on things like bikes, scooters, electric scooters, motorbikes. Works really well. Capturing the sound in those situations is something else. But yeah, in terms of like great moving imagery and video, it's fantastic. I'd highly recommend if you can get your hand on one, or a cheap one, or borrow one just to try out. If I was in Hawaii, I'd lend you one, Jim, definitely, to go and to give it a go. So yeah, the Go 3, I wish they'd had the interval video function. That would have been great. What else did I use a lot? Do you know what I didn't use, which I took with me, which I kind of like maybe regret? Again, as well as the kind of like the extra camera that I had. I'm so glad I didn't take my ZV-1 as well. I was really overpacked in my tech stuff. I really overpacked my tech stuff in London as well. And getting to this habit of like really needing to slim down, I think, was my iPad Pro. I really didn't use it that much, particularly because I just didn't have the time. I thought I might edit on the go when I was there. No, I was overly counting how many hours that I would have in the day. I think I was counting that I would have like 36 hours in a day, because I was shattered by the time I get home at night, because I was so dehydrated. I just spend all my time just kind of like drinking like electrolyte drinks and milk, because I'd be walking, you know, regularly 18, 20, 25,000 step days. I think one day I did 30,000 steps in one day. It was, I think I broke all my records on my Apple Watch over the last like 2.5 years or whatever I've had it. Yeah, I was really active and doing a lot. And so by the time I got to wherever it was that I was staying, you know, often it was kind of like a Japanese style room where it's essentially like a futon on the floor. I would go and get some dinner, come back, watch some crazy Japanese TV for half an hour, or watch the news and trying to follow the typhoon and what was going to happen, because that hit when I was there as well. Update myself on that, catch up with email, and I was out. So yeah, having the iPad Pro was probably just not necessary. I could have got away with it. There were a couple of things where it was really useful, but yeah, I could have got away with it, definitely. Jim, I imagine just dubbing musical score to GoPro footage would be a nice substitute for me worrying about miking on a bike. Yeah, particularly if you're just going to use it for B-roll, you're talking about a particular place, and then you just kind of want to demonstrate what it was like. Or if you're just using it for social media, it's fun just to kind of like just have that and dub the music on it. I used to be a DJ for about 6 years, so I actually quite like the music selection process when I'm doing those sections on my video. I do try to give it a bit of thought. The tutorial ones less so, because it's just kind of like background music. But for the ones where I'm using B-roll and I'm in a particular area, I do quite like thinking about the music and trying to set the tone and the rhythm, and just like, is it kind of like a cool track? yeah, I really enjoy doing that, and I think that's probably because I've always really enjoyed music, and DJing for 6 years really helped me with kind of like refining that. Um, I wouldn't do it again, not now. Other people have said, "Would you pick up DJing again?" I'm like, no, I got a family with 3 small kids. I actually want to see them. I'd just be shattered. Tired enough as it is. I don't need to be adding DJing into the mix. Yeah, Jim, the crazy Japanese TV. It's interesting, hey, because like there's a whole lot of like YouTube stuff on like the crazy Japanese TV ads that you can see as well. I saw very few when I was there. It's really interesting. I saw lots of game shows and the crazy kind of similar format game shows. You just see them and then they just carry on. But there weren't really any like crazy game shows when I was there. It's just kind of pretty standard Formula 8 one, but really straight ads, no crazy ones at all. My daughter was really surprised and disappointed when I said that I didn't really see any when I was there because we watched so many Japanese TV ads. She's thinking about learning Japanese next year. She's heard me talk about it so much. She'd quite like to go on an exchange or something. So that's what she wants to do. So, yeah, that was pretty much what I used when I was in Japan. The iPhone to kind of like get everything sorted day in, day out was like super handy. Everything in Japan is really easy for you to sort out. But the one tip I would give you is that don't leave it until you're there in order to sort out things for you to do. Often there's limited capacity in places. One of the things you also have to remember is that in Japan, often things don't open till quite a lot later than they do in other places. So sometimes you're looking at maybe 10, 11 o'clock start in some places, not the bigger places, but certainly other places. And they may even close in the afternoon for a little while. Certainly with food, you kind of have to time it. Often you'll see big queues outside of places and you think, hey, that must be a really good place for people to eat. Yes, but also they may have limited opening time. So they're only open for lunch between kind of like 11 and 2. And if you miss that window, then that's it. They're done again. They may open again at like 4 or 5 o'clock for dinner. So that is the other thing that you do need to remember is like when you are in Japan, not just for going to events, but just kind of to feed and replenish yourself. There's the 7-Elevens and Family Marts and things like that that are always open. You can get actually quite good food in them. But if you want like something like ramen or sushi or sukiyaki or like anything like that requires cooking, then pick your times quite carefully so you don't end up in a big queue or don't miss out completely, I would say. Jim, in the 1970s, we get Japanese ads here. We had more Japanese cultural flavor back in those days. Interesting. So that's changed a bit now, has it, for you? I know that the cultural flavor here has changed. It was kind of like quite Japan facing for quite a long time when I first got here in Japan. Over the years, it became more China facing. And you'd have more tourists from China. The Japan tourism market really tailed off. I think we now have probably more people going to Japan than we have coming from Japan. I might be wrong. I talked to the flight attendants in the last flight that I took, and I noticed that the flight was actually not that busy going back to New Zealand, and they said that they're normally loaded up more than that, but I'm not entirely sure what happens with that. So yeah, I didn't use the iPad Pro that much. I would advise kind of like booking ahead. One of the things that did work really well, which I hadn't had the chance to try, let me just get this, which I have a video about on my channel, is this. Oh, you can see the logo there, the AirFly Pro. Now, what this does is that it plugs into whatever it is that you want to plug into that has a 3.5 millimeter audio out jack. And this I plugged into the airline entertainment system. And it means that it has a Bluetooth connection, which you can use not just with, in my case, my AirPods Pro, which was just like fantastic, but any Bluetooth headphones that you have. So you can get your really nice wireless headphones to work with the airline entertainment system using that little device, which some people seem to have trouble using it in terms of they can't find the network or it seems to connect to more than one device. It's supposed to connect to more than one device, but only if you give it permission to. It can connect to two devices. That's a really nice way to kind of like, you can share one screen and both watch the same thing together wirelessly. It also means that, if you're sat on an aisle seat and the person inside you or the person inside them needs to get up and go past you, you're not going to have to unplug yourself and pause your video or whatever. You can just kind of get up and get out of the way and keep your eyes on the screen if you're in the middle of a movie or something, or just pause it. You just don't have to have that hassle of having that wire draped across your meal, or like I said, if other people have to kind of get past you. It's also just a really nice experience to have noise cancelling, just AirPods, just using them on AirFly. This thing is like really, really good. So if you fly often and you use the airline entertainment system on a long haul, most people I know use their own iPads and stuff like that these days. And I know that, airlines like United have their own app and you can watch your movies and download them or stream them on the plane on your own device, so you can use your wireless headphones that way. But if you're kind of stuck like I was on like using Air New Zealand or on Virgin Atlantic, then this works really well. I highly, highly recommend it. I got way more pleasure out of it, being able to kind of switch out of that and then into a podcast or an audio book and then back into the entertainment system when I wanted. It was really, really useful. Still useless when you try and look after two small kids who are 4 and 6 or losing their minds. Probably don't need to have your headphones in at that point. I watched nothing, listened to nothing on those flights on the way back from London. It was only useful when I sat with my 12-year-old or when I was sat alone. Jim, same here. We also had many South Korean tourists too. It's really fascinating to see the Chinese tourists now. Interesting thing is that I do believe that Air New Zealand are about to start direct flights to Seoul in South Korea again, which I don't think they've ever done. I was really surprised because I was trying to figure out, it's just kind of like costing some flights back to London again in sort of like April, May next year. And I saw that one of the routings was back through Seoul. And it was on Asiana, which I've flown with before. I love Asiana. They have a really good bibimbap on board. It's really, really lovely. I really enjoyed it. I was back in well over like 12, 13 years ago now. But it was connecting in Seoul with an Air New Zealand flight. And I was like, whoa, okay, so that's starting. Looks like early next year, at least. Mike Drennan. I did get Amazon version of the Bluetooth transmitters for my wife, and I just because your video. Okay. So let me know how it goes, Mike. I'm not sure. I do have like another kind of like Bluetooth transmitter somewhere, which could possibly work with it, but it's pretty old now. I think it'd be back on Bluetooth like 3.0 instead of Bluetooth 5.3 or whatever we're on now. So yeah, I hope that goes well for you. This thing, I know it's reasonably expensive, but it's just one of those things where it just worked really, really well. The sound quality was really good. The connection was stable, really easy to get. So yeah, it would just work for me. It's fantastic. Oh, you mentioned bibimbap. I have to go to the Korean barbecue place in town and have some now. Yeah, I'm thinking that now as well. I haven't had any for a while. I love bibimbap. So my travel plans for the rest of this year are pretty small. I probably will pop over to Nelson, which is just across the Cook Strait. I live in the bottom of North Island, and Nelson is on the other side of that Cook Strait on the top of the South Island. I'll probably pop over there in December, just kind of like a day trip. I'll do some editing, get some B-roll over there, just kind of like for my own kind of mental health and getting about and doing stuff. Next big trips are probably going to be back to London. And that's probably just to go and see my folks and my parents. They're getting a bit older now, so I'm just trying to get over there a little bit more often. Take our 12-year-old with me as well. And then later on in the year, I'm going to try and go back to Japan. I'm going to try and make that a yearly thing and be making more videos over there about cool things to see and do. I really do love being in Japan. It's relatively inexpensive to get there if you can get a deal. And I do love Tokyo. I think it's one of the best cities in the world. It's the biggest city in the world. I love being there. I love spending time there. But I also love various different areas that I've been to in Japan as well. And this time, if I try and get there towards like the latter quarter of the year, in September, maybe October, be a little bit cooler. I've not really been to Japan in autumn before, so I'm interested to see where the good places are to be in autumn. So if you've got any suggestions, any recommendations about places to go in Japan in autumn, I mean, I do love Hokkaido. I am thinking about possibly going to Hokkaido and getting a regional Japan pass there, or possibly just staying in the Tokyo region and getting a Kanto rail pass there and sticking fairly regionally. I did travel quite widely on this last one on a 7-day pass, and I think it was great, but I probably want to try and do a little bit less this time in terms of traveling and base myself in one place and go in and out of there and have a bit of a different experience. Jim, I'd love to visit Queensland down your way. I envy your nighttime skies in the southern hemisphere too. I've never seen the Magellanic Clouds. I'm not sure what they would look like. I've heard of them. We in Wellington are quite a lot further south than Queensland, so we have like quite a different kind of night sky. But we do live in an area which is kind of like a really fantastic for nighttime skies. It's often difficult to take decent photos though because it's really windy. So any long exposures, it's really difficult to get on a tripod because it's just too shaky. So even when I have to do those night lapse videos on my channel, I really have to pick the night very carefully where it's going to be maybe a little bit of cloud is okay, but it's really just trying to figure out wind. And this is a really bad time of year in Wellington. It has its own name, which I can't tell you on YouTube because this video will get censored. But it is pretty much from second week of September through to around about December 15th or 16th, where it's just horribly windy like the whole time. Once we get to there, then it kind of like eases off a bit until maybe sort of like February, March. But yeah, Wellington is known as the Windy City for a reason, and I think it rivals Chicago. That's how windy it is here. The Cook Strait is one of the most torrid stretches of water on the planet, and the wind that we get kind of reflects that torridness. The Magellanic Clouds are those two puffs of stars. We can't see them here. You can see them at the center of the galaxy. I gotcha. Never knew the name for that. But yes, we do see that. And I'm lucky that I can see them with the naked eye on a good night. Even if I just step out the door, I can see those. Occasionally we'll take the kids out if they're up late enough to look at that. It blows their mind. I remember being with my sister even in London, and it's a northern hemisphere sky, so it's a different sky, but I remember taking her camping one time. I'm about 5 years older than her, so I think I was about 18, 19, and I was a bit older. Maybe she was like 16, 17. And it was the first time she'd seen the night sky that wasn't kind of polluted with light of living in a suburban London, and it absolutely blew her mind because she really isn't an outdoorsy kind of person unless it's kind of like in a hotel. But yeah, taking her camping and looking at the night sky was a really interesting and exciting experience for her, and it's one of the things that perhaps I take a little bit for granted living where I live. But yeah, when I do actually get to see the sky, I do really appreciate it. Hi, Mike. Yeah, it is pretty amazing to be able to see that. Right, it's I've been going for about 48 minutes now. Anybody got any questions or anything that they want to ask me about anything that I did in Japan or gear that I'm using at the moment? I've got this coming up soon. Just wait here a second. I'll just grab it. I got sent this. I know there's been a few videos about it already on YouTube. This thing kind of like slots out. It's kind of a cute little thing, isn't it? But it's a kind of like a vlog camera. I think it's 2.5K vlog camera, but it sits in here and it kind of acts as like a security camera as well. So it's an odd beast, straddling this kind of like action camera plus security cam, kind of like niche market. Not really sure it is one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to look at. It's very cute looking. And you can see here a few photos there of it in action. It's kind of like double the size of a Go 2, Go 3. So it'd be interesting to see how that performs and what you could use it for. So that's coming up soon. I'm also thinking about getting a GoPro Hero 12 and perhaps comparing that against the GoPro 3. So GoPro 3, the Go 3, it's the 360 Go 3, and making a few videos about that. I think that'd be an interesting comparison. I haven't had a GoPro since the Hero 7, so it'll be a significant jump up for me, and I'm curious to see how a GoPro performs these days, what the pros and cons are, comparing a GoPro with a Go 3 these days. Particularly as we come up to the holiday season and people are thinking about making those sorts of decisions for presents or for themselves. I don't think it is dual lens, Mike. That looks like just, I don't know if you can see it, but there's just a kind of like a shiny bit there on that lens. This one, I'm not sure what it's for. So it'll be interesting to look at it. But yeah, that would have been interesting if it was a VR 180 kind of like experience lens, but to my mind, I think those lenses would be too close together to do that. But you know, it says 2.5K Ultra HD. It doesn't say anything about kind of like dual lensing. It's a vlog camera, 360 view, magnetic mount, compact and portable, and it does feature AI human detection and time-lapse shooting and two-way audio call. So yeah, the security camera kind of like feature on this is something that they're pushing. I think maybe you can watch your pets or something, like, you know, when you're not at home, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's me. That's my plan for a little bit of kind of footage. I've also got a couple of videos on, you know, the X3 and what is a 360 camera, just to kind of like fill that up for people who are starting to come to my channel and say, hey, what happened to the 360 videos you were making? I'm going to make a couple of those, just touch base with that again. And then, yeah, carry on with the Japan stories that I've been doing and a few surprises as we go along the way. All right, I think I'm going to head off now. That's almost an hour that we've been going. So I'm going to go and try and do some other stuff and go and hang out the washing and kind of chores like that I need to do. Thanks for being here, Mike and Jim. Good to see you guys. Good to have a chat. Keep in touch, eh? Lovely to see you. And everybody else who's watching who didn't chat, that's great. Lovely to see you too. And if you're watching this on replay too, don't be a stranger. Drop me a line, drop me something on the community chat, and subscribe for more from me. Aloha, Jim. That is Mike. See you now.